Thank you, Roy. We've got a few minutes for questions for any of the panelists. Somebody has to provoke somebody, so please feel free to identify yourself. Yes, sir.
Just didn't provoke anything. I just have where were you? Were you at state or were you at DHS?
No, I was a Foreign Service officer.
A Foreign Service state. Oh, okay. Working in the visa area.
Yes, among other areas.
Okay. I have a question. When you were talking about the standards, or maybe Janice was going back to the prior to 9/11 standards for visa interviews. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, at the time of 9/11, only about 20% of people who were being issued visas, non-immigrant visas, were actually being interviewed by a consular officer to determine if they qualified for the visa. And again, the two basic things in the law that enable people to apply for, to be eligible for a visa are, number one, having a legitimate and credible reason for travel that's covered by one of our visa categories, and also not having ineligibilities, of course, but also being able to demonstrate that you're going to come home to your country when your authorized stay in the United States is expired. And the interview is simply the best way to make that evaluation for a doctor. It's no different, in the same way as a doctor needs to see you to diagnose what your illness is, a consular officer really needs to see an applicant in most cases to make a determination as to whether they're who they say they are, able, credible in their application, and whether to kind of get at some of the things that may render them ineligible. And again, it's the hijackers who were not admitted to take part in the plot of 9/11, those two individuals were turned away because of good judgment by a consular officer in Germany and the other by an immigration inspector in Orlando Airport, I believe it was, who just didn't find the applicants credible, and it turned out for good reason. There are things that you learn to discern in an interview, and consular officers are much better trained at this now. They can discover in an interview that no background check, no ESTA check, no nothing is ever going to be able to tell us. Now those checks, those screening and our better watch listing are really helpful because they give the officers more information, but the interview really still is key. I mean, the State Department also made a decision not too long ago to stop interviewing people who were renewing certain kinds of temporary work visas here. And the officers in Mexico were complaining because they had found through the interview process they could see if people had gang tattoos, they could follow up on questions, they could make calls to local law enforcement agencies in the States to inquire about offenses that people admit to in person when they're asked, but are never going to show up in an NCIC check, like misdemeanors, certain drunk driving, things like that. And a lot of that stuff is not in the NCIC. And they really value that human contact, and it's potentially a huge problem for the United States in the visa issuing process if we dispense with that.
So they went from 20% to 100 and now back down to 20?
Well, no, it hasn't. Now
it's in negotiations right now, Penny. I just got the email last night. This is really recent. I can show you the language that they're batting around if you want.
And it was never 100% because certain people you'll renew, people who are elderly, but I mean, the one reason we can have the elderly requirement is we also had a fingerprint requirement that was put into place as well. People had to come in and do that too. So,
you had your hand
Yeah,
first.
my name is Noel Heilig. I just have a comment. You talked about the exit system. Senator Lieberman, as you know, is moving an authorization bill, and I believe, and I'm pretty sure, there is a provision in there calling for an exit system. I read through it briefly. I wouldn't call it very strong, and it's conditioned on not slowing down the processing lines, but at least it's in the bill and it's on the table. So.
Well, it's good to know we already have 6 laws on the books on exit anyway, so I don't think we need more. We need administration that's actually going to take it and do it. I talk about in the report that I just released at length about 2 pilots that were done a year and a half ago. Then they were required by Congress, who was so frustrated that nothing had been done. They used biometric, it was the mandate, biometric exit. So they were checking passports and taking fingerprints. One was using customs and border inspection inspectors on the jetway. The other one, that was up in Detroit. The other one was down in Atlanta, and that was using the TSA security line, doing the same thing there. They both worked really well. They were catching people off of watch lists. They were getting real-time data. There were no glitches. There was no slowdown in the lines. Nothing. And the administration, the report was extensive, that U.S. Visit did the work. The report was extensive, and the administration, like it has done many times, refused to let that report out the door. That report tells everybody what they need to know about what we can do about exit right now. I don't think we need any more laws. We just need to get it done. And you know, Jessica and I might have slightly different views on what to do and how to do it, but we both agree it has to get done sooner rather than later. And the key now is, back in 2001, 2004, we didn't have the technology to do it. We didn't even have the technology to do it well in 2007, but by 2009 we do. And so there's really no excuse anymore. And the sort of mealy, biographic on departure is helpful to the overstay issue. It's helpful to informing other immigration services once somebody's departed that they have, and having that for your consular officers, etc. if somebody applies for a visa again. But it's not going to do what was mandated by Congress, and it's not going to inform aviation security, which I think it really, really could. So, and I laid that all out in the report. So I'm glad Mr. Lieberman is on it, but I think we can do more.
Couple more questions, Laura?
Hi, Laura Reese with CSC. Question for Jessica. What are your thoughts on using remote video to do interviews? It was pilot tested in the UK after the Rise Trade-Off Initiative and then kind of shelved. Given that when they come to the consulate, you have bulletproof glass there, what are your thoughts on that versus using remote video?
Well, I think it does have, it's not ideal, but I think it does have some advantages it's preferable to not having an interview at all. A lot of the complaints about the interview requirement have to do with the fact that many people don't live near a consulate and have to travel somewhere. State has sometimes been unwilling to send officers to remote locations because of the security of the officer is compromised. There may not be a secure location for that officer to be working. So I think we really should look at video conferencing. I think it's a good idea and something that could save our applicants money and time and make it our process more efficient. As long as, they're still going to have the fingerprint and everything done. But I definitely think that it's worth looking at.
Let me take one more question if anybody's got anything. Okay, well, thanks all of you for coming. We're going to have a video and transcript of this up probably next week, and hope to see you at our next event. It's going to be on our site, cis.org. That's where Janice's new report, the to-do list of what we need to do, and all the other work that we do. So thanks a lot.